Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CliniScrips Podcast, where we explore how AI is reshaping the future of mental health care, from documentation to diagnosis, and from ethics to real-world application. And today, I'm joined by Gabriel Aboutboul, a registered psychotherapist, clinical director at Heaven Toronto, and co-founder of Toronto Psychedelic Integration. Gabriel has worked extensively in both community and private practice setting, supporting individuals with mental health and addiction challenges using evidence-based approaches like CBT, as well as insight from Western traditions such as Buddhism. So, with a strong focus on trust, collaboration, and mindful care, Gabriel brings a deeply grounded clinical perspective to the conversation, one that especially valued as we begin integrating AI tools into the therapeutic work. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with something that's foundational. So especially as more companies start building tools for therapy. So in your view, how can AI developers and the clinicians collaborate more effectively to ensure new mental health technology actually fit the day-to-day workflow of real-world therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it starts with having these conversations right here, exchanging ideas, sharing knowledge. I do think that these conversations should also involve the patient side of this conversation too. The lived experience of going through therapy is also very helpful for informing these technologies, I believe. What we want to avoid is, people like, for example, as an analogy, charting a map for a landscape they've never walked. We want to avoid the, potential of just having engineers without that clinical background building these tools and, therefore missing a lot of the obstacles that are very familiar for people doing this work already.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate as a reminder, it's not just about the clinicians and developers. It's also about, centering the voice of clients whose lived experience over reveal the gap that's the data alone can't captured. So this kind of cross-disciplinary inclusive conversation are exactly where real innovation starts. So building on that, AI has the potential to offer the data-driven insights that can shape how we design and deliver the care, right? So, but therapy isn't just about what's measurable. It's more about like the intuition, persistence, and the relationships. So how do you think we can balance data with human-centered care? So in another word, how can AI support decisions in therapy without losing the nuance that's making the psychotherapy so powerful?
Well, I think that self-inquiry is very important here. Being honest with ourselves as clinicians, asking ourselves the question, how much of my own thinking has gone into this task or conclusion I've come to? If we honestly answer that question by saying little to none of our own thinking has gone into it, I feel like we've lost the plot entirely. When we're looking at sort of incorporating AI into all of this work, it's important to sort of recognize that AI is here to augment, human performance, not replace it. AI on its own should not just be the answer to all of our problems. We have to, solve these on our own as well. So I think we have to view it as a collaboration, not as a one size fits all sort of approach.
Yeah, that's such an insightful point, and I really love how you frame it as a kind of clinical self-reflection. If we're not thinking critically, if we're outsourcing too much to automation, we risk losing not only our clinical judgment, but also the deep that's making therapy, the meaningful. And that leads directly into a challenge therapists often talk about. Well, the invisible workload, for example, such as the supervision, documentation, season planning. Oh my God, so many things, right? And all the things that happen outside the therapy hour, but are essentially to the work. So in your experience, which part of the behind the scenes workload do you think AI could generally assist with, or without compromising the integrity of care?
Well, I think note-taking, case conceptualization, treatment planning, AI can be helpful for all of those. What I do want to highlight here is the importance of protecting confidentiality, privacy of identifying information. My understanding is that in order to build these large language models that are used for this sort of work, they train on data that is given to them, and it incorporates that learning into the system to make it more effective at what it does. And I'm curious for CliniScrips, like how does your platform ensure confidentiality for clients?
Yes, so actually we really can save the clinicians or the therapists to save their time on documentation, because when they use our products, they can directly, to write down, like the AI can help the clinicians to write down everything during the session when they have the conversation with the patients. So they don't have to work after the working hours. So yes, yeah, so this is what CliniScrips do. So and we can back to what you just said. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because well, AI can definitely ease the burden of tasks like note taking or the treatment planning. It's essentially that we don't trade clinical efficiency for ethic shortcuts, right? So when we're dealing with the sensitive mental health data, protecting privacy and confidentiality has to remain front and the center. So which bring me to the human side of adoption. For many therapists, and the ideas of bringing AI into their workflow still feels unfamiliar. So some things even threatening, right? So if you were guiding the clinicians who are new to AI-assisted tools, so where would you suggest them begin? So should we start with the trust, skepticism, or something else entirely?
I mostly support like thoughtful integration of AI assisted tools into our clinical work. Um, I I think we also have to be realistic and honest with ourselves about what are the I guess um, strengths and weaknesses of these tools. So um, of course, AI can mimic aspects of a therapeutic relationship. It can, appear to be non-judgmental and empathetic, when interacting with a client, for example. But there are so many other elements of a therapeutic relationship, like setting boundaries and learning to say no. And like you do feel like there is an interaction taking place where there's another human on the other end that is going to call you out on something and refuse your requests. That's something that I don't think AI really has built into it yet, because it's really made for us, whereas a human is not made for us. It's another person sitting there across from you with their own
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah, exactly. AI might be able to, like simulate empathy, but it can't embody the complexity of the real, the relationships. Things like the autonomy, like the rupture and the repair, share vulnerability, and all the things that make therapy human. So with that in mind, I'd love to close with systems level perspective. So what principle do you think are most important when pardon me. So when introducing AI into mental health system? So that's this tools are actually usable or sustainable and ultimately supportive for long-term or real-world care?
I think the key principles to remember are confidentiality and privacy, choosing to be actively engaged in how we use it as clinicians versus like passively observing the output of whatever it produces. And finally, always remembering that, AI is a tool and
Mhm.
it's meant to be used by us. It can help augment, our performance, but cannot replace the client therapist interaction. It cannot replace our own clinical judgment.
Yeah, exactly. So for the clinicians, just remember that the accountable for how they use these tools. AI might assist, but it's just our judgment, our presence, and our ethics that ultimately shapes the care experience, not replacement. Well, Gabriel, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us today. I really appreciate how thoughtful and grounded this conversation has been, because, from exploring the possibilities of AI to emphasize the value we need to protect as we move forward. And to everybody listening, thank you for joining us on the CliniScrips podcast. If you are interested in how AI is evolving to supporting documentation, workflow, and the clinician well-being in mental health care, be sure to follow us and explore more at CliniScrips. Until next time.